Hello, Earthlings. How are you doing? So this is inspired by a video I saw a few days ago, and in it they were describing how someone went vegan. This someone was an active animal rights advocate, but not vegan. And they went to lots of different protests. They were kind of like one of these kind of angry people who shouted at people quite often. And they rang a radio station about a particular issue, and they kind of ranted and raved a little bit on the radio in their own words. And eventually the presenter, the DJ, if you like, said, yeah, okay, all very well, but what did you have for dinner? And then the person realized that they'd, as it were, been tripped up a little bit. And so they came up with a lie. And their grasp on veganism wasn't so great. And so they said a salad. In a commentary about this incident, it was suggested that calling people out as hypocrites is a useful outreach tactic. I'm not quite so sure. In fact, I think the description of this was rather false, because it was said that, well, the DJ, the presenter, called the activist a hypocrite, and that made him go vegan. This is not quite what happened. What happened was the presenter made a point. What did you have for dinner? And the person themselves realized that they are being a hypocrite. They weren't called it. They weren't labeled it by someone else. It was a self-labeling thing. They said, oh, blimey, I'm hypocritical. And that's what changed them. I think this kind of bleeds into this ongoing controversy in the movement about certain words. So content warning. I'm going to mention words like rape, Holocaust, and slavery. So if that's a problem, look after yourself and turn off right now. And it seems to me that this ongoing argument about the utility of these words, I've always felt that it's much stronger if you get people to think these words rather than you necessarily saying them. In the sense that you can describe, for example, artificial insemination and go through the details of what's involved in relation to what goes on the male side of it, as it were, and on the female side of it, as it were. Obviously, the exploitation of sexual reproduction systems. And if you describe that, and people think, wow, that sounds like rape, or wow, that's a little bit like rape, they can come up with their own kind of interpretation and give a certain weight to those kind of ideas themselves. I think that's stronger than if you say it, because there is that problem, and it is a real problem, I feel, that you're in danger of derailing a conversation by using certain words. If they think certain words, I think that's an entirely different matter. But if you say them, then I think they kind of go, hang on a second. And I think what happens then is they start to concentrate on what you've just said rather than what you're saying. So I think the utility in terms of outreach of using them as a kind of calling out thing is not as good as allowing them to think these things by just describing animal use. Our job is to describe the rights violations that go on in relation to other animals, and people will then think whatever they want about that. And the chances are they're gonna come up with those types of words, enslavement, or mass killing, genocide, maybe even, wow, that's a Holocaust. Now, it's better for them to come up with those words than us, I feel. And the second thing I wanted to say is that I think there's a mistake going on in the kind of analysis of what's going on here. And it's often said, it seemed to be the most frequent thing said, that the reason people don't like those words is that they find them offensive. Well, obviously that's possible, and it's probably true in many cases. But there's something else as well. It's about the fact that these words can create harm, real visceral harm in people. And so in that sense, we need to think about whether we want to use them or not. I think it's most relevant to the word rape. I think that when you use words like that and other ableist words, that can bring trauma back to a person that you're talking to. And so, again, if they want to come up with that, even if they might be rape victims themselves, for example, that's one thing. It avoids us bringing in and kind of risking the fact that you're going to harm someone. And we're educators, we're seed planters. Now, if you're educating somebody, you have to be careful about your language. It's called recipient design in academia. We design our talk with the recipient in mind. And so it's just a question of being a little bit cautious and careful. And, this thing about, well, what would the other animals want us to say? Well, I'm not quite sure they want us to say anything. I think they'd want us to do something. I think they'd want us to smash the door down and probably shoot everybody in there and rescue them. So what? I mean, that's kind of irrelevant. We are a social movement made up of humans reaching out to a population made up of humans. We have to take those kind of things into account. And that's why our language is important. The idea that we can just say anything, the truth, because that's what it is, and damned the consequences. That's not good outreach. It might make you feel good, but that's not what it's about, is it? It's interesting. Think about it, because it's not just a question of causing offense. It could be that you're creating real harm to someone else, someone you're trying to educate or influence. If they did it, to repeat, that's a completely different ballgame, isn't it? Okay, Earthlings, that was the thought for the day. As such, see you again. Bye for now. Take care and all that jazz.